you for joining us on the Right of Way Report, a podcast by Pike-Off OTA. You can join us here every Monday morning at 10 a.m., where we will bring you updates on legislation, litigation, and landowner information.
Well, good
Hi,
morning.
everybody. Good morning.
Hey.
How are you doing?
Pretty good, especially for a Monday. We're here. I
That's
woke up
right.
early this morning, excited about this show today. So, been up
That's
since
right.
6.
We have so much to talk about. I always wonder what we should talk about in the hour that we have, or a little bit less. And we have so much. But today, I think we're going to talk about some right-of-way and legislative hits that we're gonna try to give the OTA this year in terms of eminent domain reform. So I'm excited about that because a lot of the legislators are super duper excited about that topic in particular. At least they're outwardly excited. So we'll see how much they can get done. So
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for it. I know you've got
yeah.
a lot to talk about. So,
Should we start with the chili cook-off and let people
yeah,
know about that
let's do that. Let's throw up that chili cook-off.
while we
If I
wait
can
for some
find
more
it.
people to pop on?
Yeah. So there we go.
So for those of
So,
you, might be new
go
here,
ahead.
we're a 501c4 and a 501c3, and we've been doing a lot of work for the past 4 years to try to stop the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority from steamrolling the Oklahoma citizens. And of course, that takes money, and we have a lot of fun events. And this is our 4th annual chili cook-off. It's one of our most popular events. So we started with a whole bunch of events the first year, and it kind of whittled down to 3 main ones. And this is the one that stuck. And it's super fun. We started out at the Lakeview Elementary School, and then we went to St. Stephen's in town. And this year we're out at Cross Point Church on 24th Avenue. And there's lots of room there. We've had anywhere between 150 and 250 people come. And the chili has been phenomenal. It's so hard to decide who wins every year. But we have 3 winners, get lots of neat prizes. And then one of our volunteers, Kate, suggested we do a dessert auction last year. And that was super fun. I didn't know how it was going to go, but people brought Pike-Off OTA themed desserts, and we raffled it off, and we were able to keep paying down our litigation costs. And so if you like chili and you like desserts and you like to have interesting conversations with people, please come to that. It's on Friday the 30th. Starts at 5. And if you'd like to cook chili for us, please contact La Deanna at the email on the screen. It's ladeanar@gmail.com, or give her a call at 405-630-7600. Or you could even go to our website and sign up on the Sign Up Genius. It's $15 all you can eat for adults and $10 for kids. And it's always a great event.
It's definitely a fun time. It's one that I look forward to every year. There are some years we've had as many as maybe 12 to 15 different people cooking chili, and you'll get a sample cup so you can go around and sample all of them, and then decide which one you like the best, and then you go back to that one and you say, okay, fill me up, and so anyway, then we have all the fixings, all the toppings, the sour cream, and anything you could want to put on your chili. So, and we usually have hot dogs for the kids, or something else. So if some kids don't like, or some people don't like the chili, then there's an option there. So, seems like there's something else I was going to say about the chili cook-off. Anyway, it's a fun time. Like Amy said, it's one that has stuck, and I know everybody looks forward to it, and it's always really good. So there's
For
that.
sure. So make sure you sign up or tell your friends, and just you show up, and stay the whole time, and you'll hear from a lot of people in the Pike-Off organization about what we've been doing, what's going on, what we've got planned. And hopefully by that time, the investigative audit results have come out, so we can give you a little rundown on that. Of course, we'll talk to you about that on the podcast and on SUBSTACK, but you might get the first reveal of that audit. hopefully, fingers crossed, it comes out before the end of January.
And speaking of the audit, if you happen to have any information that you feel the auditor needs to know to include, please don't hesitate to reach out to their office. I don't have that information in front of me, or I would share it, and we can put it in the notes later. But especially if you work within ODOT or OTA or any of the engineering companies, and you've seen things that just don't add up, I want you to know that there are whistleblower laws in place to protect you. I know that the auditor's office will accept tips anonymously, so just call in, stop by their office. They're there at the Capitol on, I think, the first floor maybe, or second floor. I can't remember. Anyway, but they're amazing. They're always very welcoming if you go. I've heard a lot of people have gone and talked with them, and everyone has said that they've, you would just walk in and say, "Hey, I need to tell the auditor something about this OTA audit," and they will pretty much go grab somebody right then to come and talk with you. So, again, especially if you're within ODOT, OTA, or one of the engineering companies and something seems off to you, it's probably because it is. And that is worth sharing so that she can include that in the audit. So, anyway, I think that's about all I was going to say about that.
Absolutely. So don't forget about the chili cook-off.
Yeah, chili
Right.
cook-off. Do it.
So should we start on the legislation? Do we have enough people
Yeah.
on? Okay.
Yeah, let's get going in legislation, because I know you've got a lot of really exciting things that the group is working on. I know myself and Kate and Randy and a lot of other people have been going up to the Capitol, well, all summer. And we've been meeting with legislators. We've driven to where did we go? We went to like Jinx, I believe it was, and met with someone up there, somewhere in the Tulsa area. It's been a while since we did that, and we also went down south to the Ada area or Ardmore area, and spoke with the legislator down there. So, and that was just the ones that I went on, but I know other people have been making those trips as well. So we've been doing a lot of work over the past year preparing for this session, and we got some exciting things coming up. So let's get to it.
Okay. Well, I know some of you know that we had an interim study with Representative Danny Sterling and Senator Lisa Stanridge about eminent domain reform and the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. And we did that. That was our third interim study. The first two were in 2022, and our third one was in 2025. And what interim studies are supposed to do is present the legislators with a problem and solutions. And so what was really cool about this interim study, when we did the first one, we were just so angry and so overwhelmed. And I think a lot of us had PTSD. We were getting eminent domain and we had no idea what was going on. And so we went up there and we threw out, these are the problems, these are the problems. And we gave them a policy document that we were successful in implementing through laws. But this time we were really conscientious about giving the problem and then giving a specific solution. And so just before we start, Kelly went up there and said to the legislators, hey, the OTA doesn't even give the landowners the appraisal report. And the legislators were so shocked at that. And then the next day, the director of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, Joey Kelly, sent an email to all of the legislators and say, from this day forward, we are going to give the landowners the appraisal report. So I think that was one specific example of what happened. And then someone came up to me in the hallway afterwards and said, I don't usually like interim studies, but I really liked yours because you told us what was wrong and you gave us specific language to change the law to make it better for all Oklahomans. And I want to run a bill for your group. And I said, wow. And this was a person that really we hadn't interacted with before. And so I thought that, Pike Off OTA and the Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation are getting a lot better at being the grassroots legislative push, really, to get some of these bill reforms in. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Title 27 reform that we're working on, and that is eminent domain reform. So this doesn't have to do just with the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. This has to do with every condemning agency in the state of Oklahoma. Because like I said last week, Oklahoma was one of the first states to come out against the 2005 Kelo versus New London eminent domain United States Supreme Court ruling that said they could take your property for economic development. So we came out and said, no, you can't. But then after 2006, we did very little to strengthen our laws. And so we really need to get with the times and make it harder for condemners to come in and take our land without proving necessity, without paying the landowners to make them whole, and without proving that it's specifically for public use, which it has to be. It cannot be for economic development. And so a few of us, including Kelly, me, and a few others, gave some presentations last November. And this is one of the presentations we gave. So we're going to just talk about Title 27 reform and give you the specific language in the bills. We don't have bill numbers yet. The deadline to file the bills is January 15th. So we will not, we're still getting language today, which I'm a planner and I really don't like to work last minute, but that's just how it is every year. No matter when you give them language, if it's in August or you give it December, you still get it 3 days before the deadline. But once we have the bills, we'll be able to tell you specifically which ones to watch on that LegiScan and how to contact your legislator and ask them to get it into committee. And then we actually have one bill that I'll talk about probably next week that's already made it through the Transportation Committee in the Senate, and we need to have it heard on the Senate floor. So we're going to have you contact Julie Daniels, who's the floor leader in the Senate, to get our SB 80 heard the first week. We'd love to have it heard the first week, and that's going to be a great bill if we can get everything we want in it and have nothing poison pilled in the last minute. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about Title 27. So we need to update our public use and necessity laws. So how do we do that? Oops. Here we go. What we did was compare our reform with the national models. So what do we want to look like and who does it the best? And so we evaluated public use standards, blight criteria, and some other protections and kind of brought the best in. We also have been liaising with the Institute of Justice, who were the people who litigated that Kelo New London and are experts in eminent domain reform, and had them look at our language and say yes or no. And we've been working with some other big lobbies across the state who are really supportive of eminent domain reform and are going to help Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation and the legislators running these bills to hopefully push these through to the end. So what are our objectives? We want to restore the right of first refusal, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later. And then we, of course, want to advance transparency, accountability, and fairness. So if everything goes as planned, we will have updated the definition of public use. We will have forced the condemning agencies to go to hearing to prove necessity, just like Florida does. And we will have reversed the land banking phrase that was snuck in by one of the dark money candidates in the House in the last minute before we could catch it. And so those three things, I think, are kind of our high priority for this year. So what is eminent domain and what is just compensation? So in the US Constitution, the Fifth Amendment talks about takings and due process. And it says you cannot take private property unless you pay just compensation. And then it says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So the problem becomes, what is just compensation and what is due process of law? And then the 14th Amendment says, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And so what many states have done have improved or redefined what just compensation means. So just compensation in Oklahoma defines it as it's fair market value. So, but what is fair market value? And that can be inflated or deflated depending on what's being built next to you or the market, or, you know, just look at the prices in the last couple of years. They go up and down, and you can hit the valleys or the highs of that. And we say just compensation shall mean the value of the property taken, and in addition, any injury to any part of the property not taken. And Oklahoma does allow for some additional damages, but not many. And so a lot of people, and I'll show you that in a second, are getting harmed by this just compensation fair market value definition. So we definitely want to change that. So what do other states do? Minnesota says that at a minimum, the damages payable must be sufficient for an owner to purchase a comparable property. So we call this replacement value. And I like this because with the unique properties in East Norman, when you have fences for your cattle, or you have a barn, or you have a greenhouse, or you have fencing around your garden, the condemning agency is forced to pay for all that. We all know how expensive metal piping is for your fences, and even metal buildings now for your shops and your barns are very expensive. But they're not often incorporated into fair market value, especially if you have something like an amenity like a pool that you paid a lot of money for. How do you get that to wrap into fair market value? And you really don't, because putting in a pool is for your enjoyment, really not for resale. But if you're being forced out of your home, I don't think you should have to eat that cost. And so we like that replacement value. Indiana says that the condemner has to pay 125% of fair market value and 150% of fair market value for residential occupied land. This is okay, but again, it's not replacement value. So I think the gold standard is that Minnesota law. Missouri says 125% for homestead takings. That's the homestead means what you live in. So if you have a rental property that's not homestead, but where you live, and if everybody has not filed for homestead privileges, you need to go to the county assessor and register your home as a homestead, because your taxes can only go up by 3% a year instead of the 5% if you're registered as a homestead. And then they add this heritage value provision, which adds value for property owned by the same family for more than 50 years. And so that would be helpful to a lot of people in Oklahoma as well. Michigan says not less than 125% of that property's fair market value. And Rhode Island says 150% of fair market value when taken for economic development purposes. But I don't even think you should be able to take property for economic development purposes. So that's just an example of what other states have done. Okay, so how does the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority handle just compensation? And so last week we talked a little bit about this. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Kickapoo. On the Kickapoo Turnpike that happened in 2016, of the 104 properties taken on the Kickapoo, 44 owners had to threaten court action before receiving higher compensation. And you can see the graphic that I have on the screen that shows that when the owners had to take the OTA to court, they got more than double what they were originally when they were offered by the commissioners. Only 7 owners accepted the commissioner's award. The 23 owners settled with the OTA after this stage, receiving an average of 37% more than the commissioner's award. And the range was negative 18% to plus 376%. Only 1 owner received less. And for those jury trials, the 7 owners went all the way to jury, with 2 families still in court more than 6 years later. Juries awarded an average of 217% more than the commissioner's award, with outcomes ranging from negative 43% to 610%. And this just compensation means that how we have it written now means that it's on the homeowner's dime to go try to get more, instead of on the condemning agency's dime to offer them replacement value. Let them go buy a similar house somewhere else with enough money. And so this is not just the OTA, this is all condemning agencies in the state of Oklahoma. We wanted to show you a little bit about what's happening along the east-west connector. The unfortunate part is that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, is following the law. They're giving fair market value, but the fair market value isn't allowing the homeowners along the east-west connector to go find a similar, unique house and property that they would have had. And so, for example, a home that was 2,100 square feet, conventional brick with 2,100 square feet in outbuildings, the OTA offered them total about $435,000, but that was $35,000 less than anything, an average of comparable sales, and $63,000 less for that homeowner to purchase a comparable home. And so that means that the homeowner either has to take it and take a loss or go to court. And we don't really think that that's the right way to go about it. And then you can see for a manufactured home, the total OTA offer was $232,000, and that was about $23,000 less for those folks to be able to purchase a comparable home. And you need to think about this. So, what's $22,000 on an $8 billion project? The contractors are making bank all the time, and I'm going to show that in a second. So why are we shorting homeowners the money that it would take to go buy to go replace what they have? And
Do you think we could throw up a comment real fast
sure.
Let's throw this up there. Because this is a question related to what you're talking about here. So how is fair market value not comparable to replacement value? Could you go into that more as far as the key distinctions? So I'll let you go ahead and finish what you were saying, because I think that's what we're talking about here, and then I have a few things I'll add to it as well.
Sure. Well, replacement value means that you have to replace everything that's on your property. So, for example, if you have a 5-acre property and you have it completely fenced, and that fence would cost you let's do a round number, $50,000 to replace that fence. You've got a pool, that's $100,000. You've got a greenhouse, that's another $100,000. You've got an outbuilding, that's $100,000 to replace it. And then your home is whatever, 2,000 square feet. You can say at $200 a square foot, and that's $400,000. So your fair market value is not going to be 400 plus 100 plus 100 plus 50 plus whatever else I said. Your fair market value is going to be what you could sell it on the free market with a willing seller and a willing buyer and come to that market. But there's a lot of things that people put on their property that plan on staying forever until they die, or they turn it over to their children. That if you sold it, you would not be able to replace that. For example, building costs 5 years ago were maybe $150 a square foot, and building costs now are say $200 or more dollars a square foot. So the replacement value would get you exactly what you have right now in today's market, where fair market value is supposedly, maybe Kelly can explain this better, supposedly what you're supposed to get with a willing buyer and a willing seller, but we don't have a willing seller. The seller doesn't want to leave.
Yeah, so I can touch on that just a little bit more, just in more simplistic terms. Replacement value or replacement cost would be, what is it going to cost for you to move to a comparable place? And that would include things like, is your property tax going to be higher in the new home? Those types of things. So all of that is factored in, and or should be anyways, in my opinion. But the OTA does not do um, replacement cost. So kind of like if you had a car that was crashed, well, it's a used car because you've been driving it for 6 months, but to you it's still brand new. You still owe tons of money on it because you've financed maybe the whole thing or whatever. And then the insurance company is going to come in. They're not going to give you replacement cost. They're going to give you, you're going to replace it with another car. Maybe that's not the best example. Um, Well, really, honestly, it's kind of hard to explain. Apparently, ODOT does a little bit better with just compensation when they use the Uniform Relocation Act. Some of these um, costs are accounted for. So apparently, that's ODOT still will not, Uniform Relocation Act still does not cover increased property taxes, but they do cover some of those gaps that OTA won't cover. Um, so I don't know. Honestly, I feel like I'm just making this more complicated than simplifying it at the moment. Um, but that's
Can you
one thing
just,
that we need to push for. We need to push for replacement costs because, as Amy was saying earlier, the OTA will go, they will spend tons of money with their contractors. They'll pay them a ton of stuff, And I was actually looking through some of the bids for some of the contract work for construction on the East-West connector, and you wouldn't believe what the incentives are for early completion. They're paying anywhere from $5,000 a day to $20,000 a day for up to, I want to say it was like 60 days or something worth. Sometimes it was only 45 days worth um, if they finish early. So, I mean, if you add that up, $20,000 a day for a maximum of 45 days or 60 days, that is a ton of money and all just for finishing a little bit early. But what benefits do landowners get for moving out of their house? We don't get that. We have to take it to court, whereas these contractors don't have to go to court to ask for extra money. All they have to do is go out earlier. But I'll tell you, it doesn't seem to me that playing nice with the OTA while you're negotiating your settlement for your fair market value of your house does not get you $20,000 a day for getting out of your house earlier. I, it doesn't seem to add up. So,
Mhm.
anyway, so our legislators really need to consider how the OTA will just throw money at the contractors for anything they can come up with, but the citizens who are losing their home and will no longer have a shelter are having to use their own resources to go to court to try to fight for replacement costs when the OTA could very easily, obviously, if they're willing to pay their contractors $20,000 a day for just finishing early. I mean, they're literally getting nothing else out of this other than they get to move forward faster.
Yeah,
So if they're willing to do that for the contractors, why can't they do that for the landowners?
I agree. And not even talking about the contractors yet, but look at this, how much the OTA's budget has been blown by themselves, not understanding, or I don't know what happened, but back in 2022, when they first came out, they said the East-West connector was going to be for $49 million per mile. Then and then after March 24th of the same year, 2022, they said it's going to be $53.6 million per mile. And then on November 7th of 2024, that's 2 years later, 2.5 years later, they doubled it and said, oh no, we're sorry, it's going to cost $107.2 million per mile. That's a 109% increase of what it's going to cost to build these roads. And now we could go down the rabbit hole of why this costs more, and why the OTA is sometimes 600% over budget, like the Driving Forward program. And then go down and look at the Southern Extension. When they first came out, they said it's going to be $33.8 million per mile. Then it goes to $34.2 million per mile. Now it's at $53.9 million per mile. This is a problem because they have unlimited spigot of bond money, which is just printed. And there's no oversight into how much money they can or can't spend on building the roadway to give to their contractors. And this is what Kelly was talking about. So all this increase in budget when they haven't even put a shovel in the ground, and their costs have gone up this much. And then if you read my Substack, I have one specifically on a contractor on the Gilcrease who put in change order after change order after change order. And I think the change order got up to like $4.2 million on one small section of the Gilcrease. And there's no justification it doesn't say, scope has changed or this has changed, but it's very easy for the OTA apparently to write $4 million change orders to contractors, but they can't give a homeowner $25,000 more to buy a comparable house. And it just makes me a little bit sad that there's not enough oversight to force that to happen. So I wanted to read you just a little bit of our changed language. So we're going to call just compensation 150% of the fair market value of the property, or the amount necessary for the owner to purchase a comparable replacement property within the same community. Comparable replacement property means property of similar size, location, use, utility, access, zoning, and improvements suitable for the owner's needs. If no such comparable property exists within the community, compensation shall reflect the cost of a substantially similar property in the nearest comparable community. And we ran this by the Institute of Justice, and we ran it by several lawyers in the area who are experts in eminent domain, and they said that this would be the gold standard. We hope that this can get through and be a real improvement for the citizens of Oklahoma.
Absolutely, that will be. Because one of the things that I'm finding through talking with landowners is that their property taxes are going to increase significantly in their new place. And why is that not compensated for? Why should they have to increase something that, I don't know, it's really frustrating for me. And another thing that I have been seeing is I've been looking at listings on Zillow, kind of trying to help some landowners. And one of the things that I keep finding is property that is up for sale right now that's within a mile or so of the proposed route. They're touting that it is close to the turnpike and that this new turnpike that's coming through is going to have easy access for this property, and this is somehow increasing the value of it. However, when the landowner that is having their property taken goes and negotiates with the OTA, they're not allowed to use that future project as a perk, or something that may potentially supposedly increase the value, which I personally feel like it is going to decrease the value of property that is obviously right next to it. But in some cases, some people feel like that's going to increase it, but yet a landowner can't use that avenue. They can't say, oh, this is going to increase the property value. So it's unfair all the way around.
For sure. So we're really hoping that just compensation will get a hearing in committee. All right, so public use. This is like the foundational change, and we're not sure why this hasn't been made yet. But the public use, you can't take private property unless it's for public use. But our state statute says public purpose. And we need to change that back to public use. So what is public use? It's direct use by the public. And Oklahoma, Ohio, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Nevada, and Utah explicitly ban economic development taking. Public purpose, Texas, Illinois, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Tennessee, they keep flexibility for redevelopment, but they use guardrails such as necessity findings, parcel-specific blight, and transparency. And then some states still accept public benefit as a valid way to take your property, and they affirm economic redevelopment takings, and that's not what we want Oklahoma to do. And so we have to change our statutes to make sure everywhere it says public purpose, it says public use. And I think this is the easiest for everybody to understand because it's literally striking out the word purpose and putting in the word use. But how does the OTA define public use? So in their mission statement, they say they're promoting economic development. In their press releases in 2021 and February 22, we will facilitate further burgeoning growth and economic development in the area. That was Commissioner Rod Cleveland from District 1, who, by the way, is up for re-election in 2026, as is District 3. And we'll talk about that more this spring. And then in their long-range plan, they want to promote economic development and provide adequate revenues to achieve these long-range objectives. And that was supported by the 2025 legislative agenda, the OKC Chamber, who loves the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. So I wanted to show you what the director of the OTA thinks about the East-West Connector. And he says the quiet part out loud. He says they put it in a place that's most developable, and that it's going to look like the Kilpatrick along Memorial Road. So let me pull that up and I'll show you. This was in 2022 in the House interim study, and you can listen to it. Turn up your volume and you can hear him in his own words tell you that it's not about traffic. It's about developing the Lake Thunderbird watershed.
So we moved it up to the least impactful and most developable area that I think that we could be, and that is to use the existing Indian Hills Road as a westbound frontage road. Build a new turnpike just south of that, which will be a 4-lane divided facility, and then on the south side of that, make an eastbound frontage road so that it's one-way frontage on each side. If you want an example of what that looks like, that's like Memorial Road and the John Kilpatrick up on here on the north side of the city.
It's clear as day what these guys are doing. It's like, how do they expect to get away with it? Because they've been getting away with it.
So, I mean, I think we have to believe what people say. And I wanted to put up another short to tell you what the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority thinks about the need for this east-west connector and the southern extension in terms of traffic.
That these routes aren't going to resolve the issues that I-35 has. They just give an opportunity for people who are wanting to travel from the south, north, and east, or from the north, south.
It's clear
that these routes aren't going to resolve the issues.
So you can see that they themselves have said that, you know, they want to put it in the most developable area. It's not going to resolve the traffic issues on I-35. And we've been saying that for a long time. The civil engineers, the intellectually honest civil engineers have been saying that for a long time. There's better ways to reduce the traffic on I-35. And we can talk about that in another podcast, but there's lots of other ideas that even civil engineers and the practicing civil engineers in the state of Oklahoma have come up with some much better solutions than these current routes that have been in statute since 1993. And when we talk about our legislative reform and our changes, how can the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority predict necessity 40 years in advance of what's needed today? I mean, we can't predict what's going to happen in 40 years from now. We might not even be driving cars on concrete roads and pavement roads in 40 years. So we definitely need to take care of some of this sloppy statutes. And just to go on about the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority defining public use, in 1988, a memo from Governor Henry Bellman's office to Kilpatrick at the OTA. He was the head of the OTA back then, and that's how they named the Kilpatrick Turnpike after him. And he was talking about having some various economic development programs and refinancing of turnpike debt to enhance economic development. And then fast forward to 2024, in a memo to the board, they want to provide new economic development opportunities in urban and rural areas of Oklahoma. So I think we need to think really hard about what we're doing. I mean, you only need to lay a road if you actually need it. And we can spend probably several podcasts talking about induced demand and why building new lanes and new roads ringing cities specifically doesn't do anything to reduce congestion. Just look at Houston and Dallas. Okay, and then in the resolution of necessity that the city of Moore unfortunately signed with the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, this is written by the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority and signed by the city of Moore, and they say that the turnpikes, the east-west connector specifically that touches Moore, is expected to provide additional economic development opportunities, and they are interested in furthering the goals of coordinating efforts on transportation infrastructure improvements and economic development. And so I just want you to see that it's not about public use. It has nothing to do with traffic. It has nothing to do with safety. It has everything to do with economic development. And how do we know this? Well, you can see this is a great graphic provided by Kelly. You can see all of these big developers along the east-west connector. And a lot of these properties were purchased pretty recently before the public knew about the east-west connector. And then the Oklahoma Department of Transportation in red, you can see they bought $16 million worth of property, including Andy Alligators and right south of Hayday, and the Timber Creek Church. And they built it and they bought it with federal funds under emergency authorization from Tim Gatz, who was also the director of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority at the time. It wasn't even in their 8-year construction budget. And they bought it from some pot of money that they had, used the Uniform Relocation Act to give these guys a huge payout. And then they're about to turn it all over to the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. How did they know that the turnpike was coming through in 2021? Oh, that's right. They've known about this route for years before they let the public know. And so we're hoping that the auditor comes up with some good language about that's illegal. You can't use federal funds to build a turnpike, but we'll see. All right, so how does the OTA prove necessity for the taking? We've just seen 2 videos that said it's not for traffic, it's not for safety, it's all about economic development. So what is the necessity of taking this land, and does it follow the law? Like, should they be allowed to take your land for this? All they have to do to take your land is do a resolution of necessity. Their board members sign this resolution of necessity, say they can acquire your land, and then they're allowed to go in and do whatever they want. We don't think that's strong enough, and we think every condemning agency should have to go before a court of law and prove that taking a private property is necessary. And we think that the Florida model is a good one, where they have to prove before a jury of their peers that they actually need your land for public use. And someone in the legislature said, well, when we condemn men to death, they're condemned to death with a jury of their peers. But yet we're allowed to take private property with just a piece of paper. We think that you should have to prove that you need it. And I agree with that legislator. And that's why we decided to go and run these bills. So who has formal public hearings before condemnation? Wisconsin does, Minnesota does. Who has a review of necessity? Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania. There's lots of states that do this already, and we don't do it. We should really institute it. So our necessity language is kind of complicated, so I won't read it to you, but once the bill comes out, we'll show it to you and have you contact the legislators for support. So in the key national best practices, some highlights. Some states have banned private gain taking, so they prohibit the use for economic development. We did that in a Supreme Court hearing, but we don't do it in our law, so we have to fix that. We won't talk about blight because the Oklahoma Municipal League gets all bent out of shape when we bring out blighted properties. That means abandoned properties, because they don't want to stop cities from taking over abandoned properties, and we're worried about takings at the state level. So we think this is super important, but we're going to do that as a second tier, maybe next year or the year after that. Other states ensure fair pre-suit processes. They protect owners' reversion rights, so right of first refusal. They expand compensation. They mandate independent appraisals, and they increase transparency. So we're trying to institute a lot of these really important oversight and accountability measures for all condemning agencies. So to end, probably I can end here. We wanted to tell you about what has Oklahoma actually done to strengthen property rights. In 2011, the legislators put in a law, a right of first refusal for unused condemned land. And then in 2012, they wrote the Landowner Bill of Rights, which talks about the private property rights of a landowner. And it was pretty strong. In 2020, they put in a statute for groundwater rights protections. And then in 2025, they did this thing, fee shifting. So to be honest, I don't really understand what the fee shifting did, except that if the jury finds that the property is valued at 10% more than the condemning agency said they would, then the condemning agency has to pay for the fees of the lawyer fees.
So the significance of that is before, that was always a thing. If the jury came back with 10% higher, but I think, well, maybe not. Go ahead. Sorry, I'll let you finish.
But that was a good. It was a positive improvement. It prevented indefinite land banking, which meant that if someone took surplus land, they had to give right of first refusal back to the original owner, and they couldn't allow a state agency to swap it back and forth or use it for something else other than their intended purpose, what they took it for. And these strengthened public trust and transparency. But unfortunately, back in 2024, we opened up a statute and we allowed a poison pill in on the last minute, which is always the fear, especially in a grassroots organization. When you open up a statute, you have to really watch it. And one of the representatives put in a loophole allowing state-to-state transfers with no back offer to owners. And this is terrible. This put us back 30 years. Citizens lost the only statutory path to reclaiming the unused land. So we're going to hope to strike that out this year. Excuse me. I think really I'll just go to the last slide. Maybe we can answer some questions about it. But what is the other one? I talked about just compensation, necessity, and public use. Yeah. And really what we're doing in this, we have another one. We have a fourth one that's going to reverse, hopefully, House Bill 3159, land banking, which would be great. And so I'll end on, if you want to check out the slides, I can send you the link to that. We'll put the link to the slides in the notes below the podcast. But we gave on all these slides right here, we gave how we take the best practice and put it into draft action items. And so you can go through that, but I won't do that. But I do want to show you the last thing is that this is a picture of the director and the Association of General Contractors, Sky. And we think that people should be able to, build what they want to build, but they have to do it lawfully. And we just think that there's so much behind the scenes bad stuff going on that we hope that the auditor and the state of Oklahoma will come through and change some of our laws to protect the citizens from losing their generational wealth and from losing their homes and not being able to get something comparable. And really, we'd like the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority to be held accountable and not be able to build when it's not necessary, it's not for public use, and it's a back end around economic development. So
Let's throw this up there real fast. Oh shoot, some of it's cut off, unfortunately. Um, Let me explain a little bit what's going on here. So you were talking about how these new turnpike routes are probably more for economic development rather than a necessary use. We absolutely don't need these. There are other ways. And I thought this was kind of fun. I put together this graphic because I really kind of started thinking after the Loft report. They said that these new routes won't be paid off until for like 200 years or something. And so I was thinking, man, that's 209 years. That's a really long time. Like, how far have we come in technological advances in 209 years? So if we look back 209 years, where are we? Well, unfortunately, you can't see it on this graph, but let's see if I can pull it up on my end. That way, hold on just a second. That was, hold on, what year was that? Sorry, my computer is being really slow. It was our fourth president was in office. Let's see. Okay, so that would have been July 4th, 1776 was the birth of our nation. 209 years ago was 1816. James Madison was serving as our fourth president. And then you can look here, then look at all of these advancements that we had. We didn't even have the first um, motorized car until 1893. And then if you fast forward a little bit, we get to 2000 and we have a huge breakthrough in technological advances in transportation, and that was electric cars. So Tesla came on with, okay, we've got this, that's when Tesla was formed. And within what, 8 years, they had their first car on the market. By 2025, now it looks like there's this company called Pivotal, and they have flying cars already. And these are they only hold one person, of course, at this point, but you do not even have to have a pilot's license to operate this thing. And it literally just takes off from the ground and goes straight up, and then it kind of hovers and it flies kind of more like a helicopter. And so I just think that's real interesting to think about the technological advances that we have seen just in the past 25 years has been huge. Where in the world are we going to be in 209 years from now? Are we even going to need these roads that we're building right now? There's a good chance that we won't, because there's a lot of things that could change between now and then. People may not work in offices. Maybe they're all going to work from home. It's so much more convenient a lot of times now just to hop on a Zoom call, because then everybody has their computer and they have access to their hard drive, and you can actually, gather more data and information and access that in live time rather than meeting in an office and going, okay, well, let me go back and check on that and then I'll get back to you later. You can check it live if you're online. So I think there are a lot of things that are going to be changing in very short order, and we just can't see that right now. Like, another thing that crossed my mind the other day, it's probably not going to be very long before cars on I-35 will be driving down the highway, and they'll have, a system in place that will basically prevent anybody from crashing into the car in front of them. A lot of our cars already have that. So 20 years from now, maybe they'll be able to regulate the speed of cars, which I wouldn't necessarily be in favor of. But let's say that they do that, and then all cars would have to drive the speed limit, and no cars would be allowed to run into each other because they would have systems on board that would prevent them from bumping into things. So, I mean, there are so many things that could happen between now and then. It just kind of feels like, when you're getting ready to buy new technology, like a new computer or a new iPhone or whatever, and you think, well, if I wait another year, the technology is going to be even better. So maybe I should just hold off on this huge purchase until I can see what's coming out ahead, next year, because it's going to be better. And I kind of feel like we're in that same boat right now. Is it really wise to spend billions of dollars on a turnpike that nobody seems to want, that's only for economic development, when we could just wait 5, 10 years and see what it's going to be like? And maybe we will see for sure then that we don't need it. Maybe technology will advance so far that it'll be clear that we don't need it, and there would be a better option that would be less destructive to the environment, less destructive to our citizens. So why not just wait and see, especially considering they say this is a 15-year long range plan. A lot can happen in 15 years. Look what's happened over the past 15 years. We've come so far in technology. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of a fun one to put up and kind of help show that there's really not a lot of necessity here. So do
Right.
we want to look at the questions? Do we have any questions over there in the
Well, I wanted
in
to
the
put up one,
chat?
I wanted to put up one comment because I thought it's interesting, and we are going to talk about this. I don't know what this person's real name is, but um, the frontage roads are the key. And yes, for a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons is if the OTA doesn't have a resolution of cooperation with the entity that owns the frontage road, they are not allowed to touch it. So the fact that the city of Norman, and we were going to talk about this, and we can talk about this on another podcast because it's kind of a rabbit hole. For 77 years, it's been a rabbit hole. If the city of Norman owns Indian Hills, the city of Norman said, we don't want a turnpike. So then the Turnpike Authority went to the Cleveland County Commissioners and said, do a resolution of cooperation. So the Cleveland County Commissioners did, and I will remind you that District 1 and District 3 Cleveland County Commissioners are up for re-election this year, and they should not get reelected. So let's get people in there that want to run and want to do what the people want them to do, not raise our property taxes to pay for unfunded liabilities for maintenance on a turnpike nobody wants. But the Cleveland County Commissioners don't have jurisdiction over Indian Hills Road. They have jurisdiction over the county roads, and also the Oklahoma Turnpike and the statute, and we can talk about this more, we don't think that they have permission to buy excess land for those service roads. They can't, in statute, and it's complicated, they can't be free, but over time, at Oklahoma County, they bought extra surplus land that they were going to give to the county to do service roads. And then nothing happened. And Kelly can talk a lot more about this. This will probably take us, 3 or 4 hours to explain this. But so they broke the law there. And then now they wanted to buy extra surplus land for people to do these service roads here. But we don't actually think they're allowed to in statute. They're only allowed to buy land for the actual turnpike and getting on and off the turnpike at interchanges. It's not in statute. They cannot buy land and then gift it to the Cleveland County Commissioners or gift it to the city of Norman or gift it to the Oklahoma County Commissioners to put up free access roads. That's not in their language in the statute. And so I'd love to talk to you more about that because the frontage roads are the key. And we know that. And believe me, the number of lawsuits that we have queued up is enormous, but we have to be really careful that we launch them exactly when they need to be launched and when it's going to have the most power. But yeah, we'd love to talk to you more about that because maybe you have some insights that we missed, but we're definitely looking at the frontage roads.
But those frontage roads are key because, like you said, it's to generate economic development. And I think you touched on something a minute ago that I want to dig into just a tiny bit more, is that goes back to necessity. If they're taking extra land, knowing they're going to give it to another entity to do something with, then that is not necessary for the operations or maintenance of the turnpike, which is what their Enabling Act says they have to do. That is the only thing they're supposed to take property for, is for the necessary operations and maintenance of the turnpike. So if they know ahead of time that they don't need it for the turnpike, that they're going to give it away, because obviously if you're giving it away, that's saying you don't need it, right? So if they know that, then why are they doing that? And then another point I'd like to point out here is that when you are taking that extra property from landowners, that's another time where we really need to hone in on necessity and focus on making them prove necessity, so that our landowners aren't caught with the short end of that stick. And I think this is something that landowners need to push. If you do get taken through condemnation with the OTA, you need to talk with your attorney and have them investigate this, perhaps you want to challenge the necessity of the take. I think that's something you should really look strongly at, especially for the portion of the property that is going to be turned over as frontage road. That, in my opinion, and that's my opinion only, I'm not an attorney, do not take this as legal advice, but in my opinion, that is not necessary for the construction, maintenance, or operations of that turnpike project. Therefore, I do not feel the Turnpike Authority should have the ability to take that. And I would advise anybody, I would encourage anybody, maybe not advise is the right word, but encourage anyone who's having property taken that may include space for this frontage roads to challenge that necessity, because I don't feel like it's necessary. And I think there's a case to be made there.
Yep, I agree.
Amy, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope.
So
We're-
chili
we're-
cook-off, we're at a little over an hour now, so we probably better hop off here unless there was something else you wanted to talk about. But let's throw back up the chili cook-off and let's talk about that one last time, because I think that's super important. Chili cook-off, great, wonderful event. Everybody has the best time. The chili is phenomenal. The desserts last year were incredible, absolutely incredible. They were super interesting and creative, what people came up with, and very, very tasty. So that's going to be January the 30th from 5 to 7:30 at the Crosspoint Church. You can go to our website for the address on that. It's there on 24th Avenue in Norman. If you want to sign up to cook chili, that would be amazing. It's always fun to have a whole wonderful variety of chili to taste, and kind of, anyway, that makes it really good. Let's see, what else did we need to talk about here? We'll have some t-shirts for sale. I should throw up the design. It's similar to the one we've done before, but these are going to be red shirts. We'll post them on the Pykoff website, so you can order them ahead of time if you'd like and get those paid for. And then even if you don't come to the event to pick them up, we can always ship them to you later, and you're welcome to order anytime. So with that, I think that's about all I had. Did you have anything else, Amy?
No, thanks for watching, everybody, and just stay tuned for some good Substacks, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us on the Right of Way Report, a podcast by Pykoff OTA. You can join us here every Monday morning at 10 a.m., where we will bring you updates on legislation, litigation, and landowner information.